Sagt der Heilige Mishnah an Daf Yud Beis Amar Aleph. Metzias benoi uvita yaktanim, the Metzia of his minor children. Metzias avdei v'shevchasa yaktanim, or a Metzia of an Eved and a Shevcha, or Metzias ishtoi harei elu shaloi. Rashi says that we have reasons for every halacha that we learned so far in the Mishnah except for one. Metzias bitoi is to him because kol shvach neurim lavia, she gets everything until his wife. The father gets everything until the daughter becomes a bikus. Metzias avdi b'shevchasa yaknanim, he owns them, so anything that they're koina, he gets. Metzias ishto he gets because of Ava. Since he's supporting her, he would be upset at her if he wasn't entitled to something that she found, so therefore he gets it. What's unknown is benoi, why is it that a father gets the Metzia of his son who's a minor? We also are going to need to explain what a minor is. So that's the first half of the Mishnah. How about Metzias benoi ubitai hagedolim, adult children? They of course go to the children themselves. Metzias avdei v'shevchasa ivrim, if it's an Eved, an Ivri, or a Shivcha, or Omar Ivriya, that goes to them. Metzias ishtoi shegirsa, and if he divorced his wife, alfa pisha leinasan ksuba, even though he didn't give a ksuba, harei elu shalahen, they keep their own mitzvah. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Omar Shmuel. Mipnei ma omru Metzias katan la'av. Why is it that we say the Metzia of a katan goes to the father? Shebishah shemoitza, as soon as the child finds something, he runs to his father. He doesn't keep it. Now, if Bidaraisa, the son, has a kinyan and he's a katan, so it's his. But we're saying he never is kinyan to go straight to his father. That means, remember, the Savar Shmuel katan lesle schila nafshemi Bidaraisa. It must be that the way Shmuel is explaining the Mishnah is that a katan Bidaraisa cannot be kinyan. Cannot be koina metzia, that is. But Tanya, we learned that Shmuel holds that in fact a katan can be koina midaraisa, because it says in the brayso, "Asoicher es a poil." If someone hires an oni who is a poil to work for him on an hourly basis to harvest his field, yalaket b'noi acharav, the child of his worker could pick leket, because even though whatever the child picks up is the father himself is entitled to the leket because the father's an on. But what if the deal that the owner of the field made with the father was lamech shlish ravia, that he gets a third or a quarter or half of the field, so now the person who's picking no longer qualifies as an ani. He would not be able to pick leket from this field. Therefore, lo yalaket b'noi achra. Since when his son is collecting the leket, it's as if he's doing it for his father, and his father is not allowed to collect the leket, therefore he can. But Rabbi Yosy, it doesn't matter. Benkach ubenkach yalaket benoi ve'ishtei achra. And what's the svara for it? Because Rabbi Yosy holds that the child has his own kinyan midaraisa. So since he has his own kinyan midaraisa, the child is allowed to take the leket, because no matter how rich the father is, the child is not, and therefore he can take leket. Shmuel, and Shmuel paskin the halacha Rabbi Yosy. So clearly Shmuel is paskening that a katan has a kinyan midaraisa. Zokt Gemara, Yamut b'shlom a katan islay schil nafshei midaraisa. If you learn pshat in Rabbi Yosy that a katan has his own kinyan midaraisa, then it makes sense. Ki kama laket le nafshei kama laket. When the child's taking, he's not taking for his father; he's taking for himself, and he's an ani. And then afterwards, he can give it to his father. If you hold the cotton can never be kind anything, so midaraisa the father's being kind directly. He's not allowed to if he's an usher. And therefore, so it must be that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yosy that midaraisa the child is kind. Yet Shmuel learned in our Mishnah that the child is not kind. That's 100% correct. Shmuel himself holds like Rabbi Yosy that the child himself is a kinyan deraisa. But the Mishnah clearly argues on Rabbi Yosy, and all Shmuel was doing was explaining the Mishnah. Shmuel time of the Tana they done kamar, but he doesn't hold of it. Zok the Gemara, the Savar Rabbi Yosy katan islay schima deraisa. Does Rabbi Yosy hold that a katan aschima derises. That how you're leading pshat in Rabbi Yosy. Why the child could be malak and acharav? I'll prove to you that Rabbi Yosy holds that the child does not have a kinyan deraisa, and then we're going to need to know why the child's allowed to collect the leket. But now we learned Metzias cher shoyde v'katan yesh ba mishum gezel mishum dak yishalom, which is their abundant clearly. But Rabbi Yosy Omer gezel gomer, which sounds at first glance like it's deraisa, but the Omer Rab Chisda gezel gomer midavreyan. Even Rabbi Yosy holds that the kinyan of a katan is only midrabanan. So what's the difference if it's dak yishalom or gezel gomer if they're both midrabanan? Nafkamina lo yitzia b'dayanan. The nafkamina is if someone takes a metzia away from a katan, will Bezdin take it away from that person and give it back to the katan? El Amar Abaye, Zokt Abaye, you know why, according to Rabbi Yosy, these children are allowed to collect, even though they're technically collecting for their father and their father's a nashir. Is asua kamisha alchu b'nemushos? They treat this field like a field that is already completely empty, and many people went to gather leket, and there's nothing left. And such a field, anim gufayu maski datayu. The anim gufa are mesich das from this field. They're moichel this field. Savri they hold, berei deheich malaktale. We're not even going to bother coming to collect because surely his son is going to take whatever is available. So we're not even going to bother going to try to collect. So since they're miyai, should become his mutter. But frankly, Gemara, you're putting the cart before the horse. Amalei rabada bar master la'abaye v'chibutu la'adam laharbit ari b'soich sadeu kidei sheyiru aniyim v'yivrchu. Am I allowed to do something that's going to prevent aniyim from wanting to come to my field? Avadi not allowed to. So how can I bring my son and that'll scare away all the other aniyim? It shouldn't be allowed. I'll tell you why we let the child collect. Also, as turning on to daf yud beis amid beis. Also, as Midrabanan, they have made a kinyan for this cup. They made magic kinyan midrabanan. Why would they do it? My time, because anim gufayu nichalu. All anim want this. You know why? Because whenever they are working in the field, they want your child to be able to pick the leket behind them. So they're happy to let this fellow have his child pick the leket from that field, so that when they're working in the field, their child can pick the leket as well. When they get hired, so that their child will be able to collect. So that is the first shot that we have, that a katan means a minor under bar mitzvah, and he doesn't have a kinyan midiraisa, and a katan, and once a child is over bar mitzvah, he has a kinyan midiraisa. But upliga there Rabbi bar Abba. This argues Rabbi bar Abba because Rabbi bar Abba learned that the definition of a katan is not age, and the definition of a gadol is not age. We're not talking about the age. If he's an adult, but he's still being supported by his father, that's considered a katan, and he doesn't have a kinyan for himself, his father gets whatever he's claiming. But katan, if you have a katan who's independent, he does get his own kinyan. Frank Gemara, we just learned that if I hire somebody, l'chol malacha, and he picks up an aveda, I get to keep it. So isn't a Eved Ivri no different than that? Am I Frank Gemara? Lo yehei ala poil. It should be no worse than a regular poil. Utanya metias poil la'atzmoi. When does the poil get to keep his own aveda if he was hired for some specific task, not to pick up avedas? But if I hire somebody for all of his labor, what if he's going to do? Then the balabais gets it. So isn't an Eved Ivri similar to somebody who is being hired for any type of malacha? And the Metzia should go to the balabais. Why does the Mishnah say that the Eved Ivri and the Amar Ivri get to keep their own Metzia? And I'll tell you what. We're speaking about an Eved who has a very highly skilled job, and the Balabais doesn't want him to divert his attention to pick up Metzias. So he's not happy with that. He doesn't want that. Therefore, the Metzia goes to the Eved. But of course, since he diverted his attention from his job, he would have to compensate his boss for the value of his time as a Neikav Margolios that he turned away from while he was picking up the Metzia. Rav Amar, You know why in the Mishnah's case the Eved gets to keep it, even though normally his Baal, his owner, his employer, gets to keep whatever he finds, is because it's b'makbia metzia imalachta yaskin. He was doing work for the Adon, fulfilling his responsibility, and he was able to pick up the metzia without diverting from the malacha that his Baal gave him for 1 nanosecond, and therefore he gets to keep the metzia. Rav Papa has a different approach. Rav Papa said this hanacha that you have, that any employer who hires somebody for general labor gets to have all his metzias, that's not true. The only time an employer gets the metzia of his eved is if he hired him specifically to collect metzias. And that's what that Bryce was speaking about. You actually hired this guy specifically to find metzias. Now, nobody's going to hire somebody to look for metzias, but it's speaking where there's metzias available. Why? What happened was the tide came up and fish were brought up on the beach, and then the water level dropped quickly, and a whole bunch of fish got stranded on the beach. So now there's a whole bunch of fish that are ready for the picking. And he hired this person to pick to gather all that fish. They were all metzias. Zok to Gemara. The Mishnah says that the Shivcha keeps her own metzias. Well, what was the case? If she's an adult, she brought Shtei Cyrus, then she's not a Shivcha anymore. We know an Amevri goes free once she brings 2 Cyrus. My boygabe, what's she doing why is she called an Amma? And if she's still a minor, so then why should she get to keep it? If she has a father, did we not say that the Metzia of a Ketana goes to her father? And if her father died, then why isn't she going free? And the Amar of Riyah goes free even if her father dies. And what is the Kal V'chomer? Madich, the Adai. Let's see the lashon Kal V'chomer. Madich, Simonim, that don't take her out of Rishus Ha'av, because we know the father controls his daughter until she's a boigris. So Madich Simonim, that don't take her out of the Rishus Ha'av, takes her out of the Rishus Ha'adon. Misas Ha'av, which does take her out of the Rishus Ha'av, because once the father dies, the sons don't yarshin this chosim that he had in her. Surely it should take her out of the Rishus Ha'adon. So we should bring a raya from here that she doesn't go free. And it's speaking where her father died, she's not going free, and that's why she gets to keep her mitzias. So maybe it's a kash on Rish Lakish, because Rish Lakish old, she does go free. So the Gemara, we know Rish Lakish was slugged up anyway in the Gemara where he said it. But name of maybe you should have a raya from our mission as well, that she does not go free when her father dies. So you don't have a raya. We can say that this mission is speaking where her father is still alive. You're going to ask me, why does she get her mitzias? It should go to her father. In fact, it does go to her father. You know what the Tana meant when he said the mitzias or shalahen? It's lafuka de rabba. It just means that her Adon doesn't get it. But Avada, she doesn't get it either. It goes to her father. Metzias Ishtai, the Metzia of his wife. If he divorced her, the Mishnah says he no longer gets her Metzias. Pshita. What do I think otherwise? It's speaking where it was a suffix Mugureshes, for instance, suffix Karav Loi, suffix Karav Law. Whenever there's a suffix Gerushin, the husband still has to support his wife. So I would have said that maybe he gets her mitzvah because of that, because of Ava. Why do we say the husband gets the mitzvah of his wife? There shouldn't be Ava here. I'm supporting you. We want to have shalom bayis, but Hakar, they're getting divorced anyway. So therefore, even though he has to still support her, he won't get her mitzvahs. He's angry at her, he's divorcing her anyway. If you find shtar chayv, if they have a chayis in the shtar written, which means you'll be able to collect from the lekeach, lo yachzer, don't give it back to the malva. Shebezin the front man. Bezin might wrongfully collect from the lekuches. and we're going to see why soon. What if this star does not have a chayis? So there's no way you can collect from the lekeach. Yachzer, then you can give it back. There's no danger that we're going to collect from the kuchos. Never there. The Chachamim no, we're worried you'll collect from the kuchos because benkach lo yachzer because the Rabbanan hold achrayis to a sofer, even though there's no achrayis written in the star. We say that this loan has a chay. Zok the Gemara b'mayaskin. What is the case of this mission? If it's speaking where the loiva agrees that this is a legitimate star, and therefore he still owes the money. So if that's the case, even though there's an achrayis on this star, and you can collect from the lekuchos, amala yachzer. Why shouldn't you give it back? No one's being wrong. Hamoida, the loiva is moida that he owes the money. There's a proper shibud koyis that you can take from the lekuchos. Give it back to the mal. And if you're going to tell me that Mishnah is speaking where the loiva is saying, no, I paid up, I'm denying it, then in the case of the Mishnah where the star did not have a chayis, why would you give it back? Yes, granted, you're not going to be able to month from the kuchais, but the v'nechari migvagavi. But you're still going to collect from the loiva, and the loiva says that it's not a good star. We're going to tell on the Mishnah, it's speaking kishachayev moed. So that's why, if it doesn't have a chayis, you for sure can give it back because the loiva is happy to pay. So if it has a chayis, why can't you give it back? Maybe the star was written in Nisan, but the halva only occurred in Tishrei, which means that the shibud only started in Tishrei, and if we give back the star, the malva is going to be able to collect from the kuchos all the way back to Nisan, and it's going to turn out that he might seize property from the kuchos wrongfully. If you're worried about a star that it might be predated, so then never mind this star, every star you should be worried. Anytime a malva comes with a star to collect from the lekuchos, you shouldn't let him. Maybe it was predated. No. A regular star that comes to us, we're going to assume it was written when the loan occurred. Kol story loy rei, there's no reisa, honey rei. This star was found on the floor. The fact that it was found on the floor tells me that maybe there's no loan behind this star. Because if there was a loan behind the star, you could bet your bottom dollar the malva wouldn't drop it. The malva wouldn't. So now the Gemara is saying that you're not allowed to write a star before you actually give the get. The problem is that we have a Mishnah that says you are. How could you do that? How can we allow something like that to happen? Rabasi, this Mishnah that says you can predate a star, you can write a star before the halva occurs, that's not a regular star. That's a special type of star called Zok the Gemara and Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph B'Shtorei Hakno. That's talking about a star that's makne a shibud to the malva, whether or not I borrow money at all. Basically, the star says I'm makne to you a shibud of $100,000 in my fields. Period. I owe you the money. Now, if no matter when I borrowed the money, it doesn't matter because the shibud started right now. The shibud nafshay, the shibud starts immediately. But our Mishnah is not speaking about such a star. Our Mishnah is speaking about a regular star. But in fact, Gemara ihachi masnisin the katani im yesh ben achrayis nechosam al yachzer v'ukim the kishachayev moida. And why don't we want to give back the star to the malva mishum shem because of the lavis ben nisan the lava tishrei v'asin lemitra v'chucha shloi kedin? Why are we choshed that? You never predate a star unless it's a star kna. Alma amaylo yachzer. Why did you give it back? Next, let's analyze. If it's a star kna, give it back. Because the kinyan happened, the shibud happened on the date of the star, or shibud le'nafshay. And even if the star the loyachna, and if it's a regular star, like what are we concerned about? That it was written before the halva occurred? It would never be written that way. The amrit ki leka milva badei leka written. We already said you're not allowed to write a star unless the halva is happening right in there. So what's the concern? Amr Rabasi, you're right. You're not supposed to. Abagav the star the lavakna ki leka malva badei leka svinon. Even though that's not the right way to do it, but since it fell on the floor, we're choshed that something went wrong, and they made the star unlawful. Therefore, masnizan kibbutz nafal, once it fell, Israelite, we say that there's a reyes in the star, v'chashinon dilma ikri v'kas. And we're concerned, maybe in fact it was written, and even though there's no alva. And that's the chashash. Abaye says that doesn't make sense to say that, because if the professionals know they can't write a star unless the halva is happening, it could not have happened. So therefore, Abaye has a different approach. Abaye also holds, as an aside, he also holds that even a star that's not a hakna, if it was predated, we'll still say the Shiva started from the time that the Edom wrote on the star. So if the Edom wrote on the star that today, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he borrowed money, and he doesn't borrow money until Tishrei, the Shiva is officially starting back from Nisan. Because the Edom, when they signed the star, created a Shiva. Afilu started Lavakna. Now, Mishum Dekashalei, Abaya has a problem with the teretz that Rabbi Asi gave. Since we've already established that you don't write a star if the malva is not there and the loan's not happening, we're not choshesh that's what happened. So I disagree with Rabbi Asi's chashash. That's not the reason why our Mishnah says don't give it back. So now we need to find the shot according to Abaye. We need to understand in our Mishnah, if the chayiv is moed, if the loiv is moed, why don't we give the star back to the malva? What is the concern? There's no concern that the star was written before the halva occurred, because Abaye said that doesn't happen. We learned in the Mishnah, why? Maybe the person wrote the get, he wrote the shechur, wrote the matana, but he never gave the get. He wrote the get, he never gave it. Who cares if he backed out or not? Once he writes it, the Eidah make it happen, as we just said. When does Abaye say Eidah v'chesum of Zachamai? That's if the loan actually occurred. So if they wrote the star in Nisan and no loan ever occurred, there's no Shibud. But if they wrote the star in Nisan and in Tishrei they actually did a loan, we'll say the Shibud gets backdated to when the star was written. Same thing with the star Matana and the Daitaki to get. Yes, we say Eidah v'chesum of Zachamai, but that's only if eventually it does reach the hand of the receiver. So let's get back to our Mishnah. Since Abaye is not choshesh that a star was written improperly, so what's shot in our Mishnah? Why don't you give it back? And the reason why we don't give it back is because of the lavas Tishrei. Rabasi would learn to speak by a regular star, and the regular star might be predated. According to Abaye, he holds there's no chash. What is the chash here? Why shouldn't you give it back to the malva? I'll tell you why. Yes, there was a good star. It was a good star. It was fine. But what happens if it was already paid off? That's why you found it lying on the floor, because it was already paid off. And the malva and the loiva want to play a shtickle. The loiva will give it back to the malva. The malva will collect again from the loiva. And the loiva will say, yes, I owe you the money, but I don't have the money. And then the malva will go take karka from the lekuchites unlawfully, because in fact there was no loan here at all. And then the malva and the loiva will split the property. So maybe they have some scam planned. That's why we don't give back the star. Shmuel holds the moment a loiva pays off a star, he takes the star and destroys it. So it's impossible to have a non-valid star in existence. So therefore, you're not choshesh le'proin l'kanunya. Ma'ikal meimer. How will he understand our Mishnah? Hanichi yishav l'karbasi. If he holds l'karbasi, damer b'shtari akno, that the star that you're allowed to predate is a star akno. Muki mistisin b'shtari d'lav akno. They'll say our Mishnah that says you're not allowed to give back the star is speaking of star d'lav akno. And the concern is maybe because of the lava is for the lava. Ella yishav kabaye. If Shmuel is going to hold a kabaye, damer edav b'chasuv of zachaloi. What is the chash here? What could possibly have happened in our Mishnah? Why don't you want to give it back? Shmuel will have another approach to our Mishnah. Shmuel will say our Mishnah is speaking in a case where the loiva is saying, no, I don't owe you the money. This star is forged. If the star is forged, if the loiva is claiming the star is forged, what does the Mishnah say? If it's no achrayis nechasim, Rameir holds you can give the star back. Amai Achser, why should you give it back? Need like Gavi in the Mishabdi. Okay, you won't be able to be Gavi in the Mishabdi, the Malva, but when the Chari make the Gavi, the Malva will be able to collect from the Loiva. How could you give a star back to the Malva if the Leiva is screaming it's not a good star? And now if you give back the star, the Malva will be able to collect from the Leiva. So the Gemara, because Shmuel Atameid Amar Shmuel, Amar Hayer Ab Meir, Star Chayiv She'ein By Achrayis Nechasim, Ein Goiva, Loi Mishabdi, Veloy Mibnechar. If you have a star that doesn't have a Achrayis in it, that's a puzzle the star. The star has to have a Achrayis in it, and if it doesn't have an Achrayis in it, then the whole star is puzzle. So therefore you give it back to the Malva because he can't collect with it anymore. And the Rabbanan hold on the other end of the spectrum. Not only is the star not puzzle, we say automatically that it has a Achrayis. If the Malva can't collect with the star, so why are we giving it back to him? What value does it have to him? Why does he even want it? The Malva will just use it as a paper stop. He'll stuff bottles with it. Frank the Gemara, why should the Malva get it? Maybe the Leiva should get it. But how do you lose the Leiva? Lots al pitz luchuzah shalayva. So the Gemara, how can you give it back to the Leiva? Leiva who the Amar turning on to Yud Gimel Amar, the Leiva was the one who claimed the Amar la habit very ma'ilum. He says it's not. He says the Mezuyif the star. He says this star the Malva made up. So the Leiva admits that it's the Malva star. It's just not a valid star. So therefore, when you give it back to somebody to use as a bottle stopper, it's the Malva's going to get it because maybe the Malva was the one who forged the star. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we got up to the top of Yud Gimel Amar, and the next year we'll cover from here and on. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.